So we have a very decentralized working environment in which fewer than 10% of the employees at Automattic work from the San Francisco Bay Area, which is where our headquarters are. People can live and work wherever they want in the world. And we communicate mostly through online text methods such as Slack or our internal communication system, which we call P2s. It's essentially our intranet. And that's how we communicate with one another and stay in touch. No, it's really just a function of where people live. So I happen to already be living in San Francisco, which is why I work from San Francisco. But I can move to New York City or to really anywhere in the world if I wanted and still be doing my job. For my specific role, it's a little bit easier to be based in San Francisco since part of my role is around partnerships. And there are a lot of companies that are based in the Bay Area that we partner with. So if I live somewhere else, I'd simply have to travel to the Bay Area every now and then for meetings. But I could live anywhere I wanted. Yes, they can. We do. So once there are at least 5 people located in a country, we'll look into creating a syndicate in that country so that we can provide full benefits to those employees. And the vast majority of our employees are full-time employees rather than contractors and receive full benefits. Yeah. At least once a year, we have a very large get-together, and that's called the Grand Meetup. It's everyone in the entire company will fly in and be in one place together for a full week. And the last one just happened around a month ago in Park City, Utah. And it's a great time for us to get together and strengthen those relationships, meet new people who joined over the course of the past year, and so on. Aside from the Grand Meetup, we also have team meetups. And most teams either meet 1 or 2 times a year in a place of their choosing. So they might want to meet in a place where they already have a few employees working, or they might want to meet in some new location, some central ground, or somewhere exotic. That's fine too. We've had meetups everywhere from Amsterdam to London to South Africa, Australia, New Zealand, Hawaii, it's all over. So people do move around depending on their interests and their skills. If somebody's been a high performer for a good period of time, then and has an interest in exploring a new part of the company, we're absolutely open to making that team switch. Sometimes whole teams will change the focus of what they're working on as well, depending on company priorities. That happened just last year. So something became less important than another project, and so the entire team started working on that new priority. So we're pretty fluid and pretty flexible as to what people work on, and we also want to make sure that everyone is developing in the way that they want in terms of developing the right skill sets and advancing. It depends on how you define a team. I think that once you get to be more than 8 people, we'll consider splitting the team. So for example, if a team becomes 20 people strong, we might divide them into two groups. There's quite a lot of variation. We're growing quickly as a company, so some teams do get large, and then new teams are formed. So there is a fair amount of variation there. I'd say there's some shared values, but I'm not sure how much of those values are coming from San Francisco per se. So we are an entrepreneurial company. People are highly motivated. They're self-starters. We have terrific developers. These are traits that we have in common with a number of Bay Area companies, but it's certainly not exclusive to the Bay Area. I think if Matt were to start the company again today, having a headquarters in San Francisco might not be such a priority because we do have such global distribution and have evolved into a culture that, while it has all of those values, doesn't really depend on San Francisco. It's very self-organized. So we have a large manual called the Field Guide that tells you pretty much everything you need to know about Automattic as a company, how to set up your proxy access. So everything from the cultural suggestions on how to organize your workday to the nuts and bolts of how to actually get online and how your first week is going to look. Something that's very interesting about the way we do our onboarding that's different from many other companies is that the first 3 weeks of every new employee's tenure is spent doing support. So we call our support team happiness engineers, and everyone joining the company, regardless of their role, and even if they've been acquired, so even if they've come in through M&A, we'll spend this time in support doing tickets so that they establish that relationship with our users, get to know where the pain points are, and really make sure they understand our product thoroughly, because a lot of people will have experience with some parts, but maybe not the whole suite. So that's a common experience that we make sure all employees have when they join. So we're pretty careful to make sure that cultural fit is something that we interview for and select for before we extend an offer. So we have very few people who join who aren't cultural fits because of that process. So for example, a big part of our interviewing process involves a trial contract. So once an employee or a prospective employee seems like they'd be a good fit, we'll ask them to do a project. And the project will last a few weeks usually, and we'll give them access to a part of Automattic's intranet, the part that's relevant to their work, and we'll give them a chance to actually work alongside the people that they will be working with once they join. And that gives both sides a sense of whether this is going to be a good fit. Communication is extremely important, so during the trial, the evaluation isn't just are they doing a good job of the work at hand, but also how are they interacting with their colleagues? How are they communicating? How are they using the communication channels we have? How frequently? And so on. And so because we've had a chance for people to actually work together before we've made a hiring decision, we have a very low attrition rate. One of the lowest attrition rates of any company I know of. I'll start with the qualities that are most important. Being a self-starter, so being motivated, not needing a lot of direction, is very important because you have a lot of autonomy at Automattic, and to be successful in this environment where there is no office that you come into every day and you may not have somebody telling you what to do every minute of the day, checking in and in-person meetings, it's very important that people are motivated to do their work and can sort of be their own bosses. It's also very important that people want to learn and are curious and want to always be improving themselves. It's just one of our cultural tenets. Being kind, being collaborative, always helping out a colleague, that's very important too. Because we're decentralized, sometimes it's a little harder to reach out to somebody or to know if somebody needs help. When somebody reaches out, it's extremely important that as a company we prioritize helping them with whatever it is they need. And so those are some of the most important qualities, I'd say. I don't think there's any difference between women and men in exhibiting those qualities. I think the average age of an Automattic employee, of an automatician, is in the early 30s, early to mid 30s. I think that's just chance because of the way we've grown up. The company was founded around 10 years ago, so we do skew a little young. But I don't think that certainly there's a tremendous amount of diversity in the age of employees. We've had some people join while still finishing their degrees, and some people who are much, much older and have many more years of experience behind them that they can draw upon. And I think that having that diversity is very important. So The youngest automatician at the moment would be, I don't know who the youngest one is at the moment, but we did have somebody start while still in college, and he was still full-time. I think it took him a little longer to graduate as a result, but he spent all of his vacations, his nights and weekends working at Automattic, and was a terrific asset, terrific hire for us. So he was, I think, 19 or 20 at the time he joined. He's older now. And on the older side, we don't often sit around talking about our ages, but my guess is that we have people who are in their 50s, and we have a number of them. It's very important to most of our employees. It's something that we actively select for when we're interviewing, and many people come to Automattic because they have a passion for the product, because they've been working in the WordPress ecosystem for years, because they strongly believe in the power of open source, and that having products be offered for free, having code be available so that others can fork and change them and contribute is very important. So it's still one of our key tenets. I don't see that ever changing or going away, and it's a big reason for why people choose to work here, their passion for that. I'd say self-management. I think team spirit is important too, but self-management is just so critical in a distributed environment. And team spirit is great. We all feel strong, I don't know what the right word is, but we all feel strong allegiance or loyalty to the fact that we are all automaticians. So that's there too. I think they're both really important, but when you're working from home, and perhaps you're working from home in a country where there aren't very many other automaticians, I think having that ability to work on your own and to be a self-starter and to be productive in that environment is absolutely critical. So it's very hard to choose between those two because they're both so important, but I'd say that the one is table stakes and the other is just very important. I think it's a broad question, given that there are so many different education systems we could be talking about. I would say that people who are curious and self-motivated and want to learn, in this day and age, most people do have access to ways for them to gain new skills. So with the internet and with so much that's available there, with public libraries, there are a lot of ways for people who care to learn new skills, to develop, to improve. And those are exactly the kind of people that we're looking for. So perhaps our education systems could change to encourage and foster more of that kind of self-motivation. But I think that a lot of people will have it regardless of where they grow up and what kind of education system they're in. And it's those people that I think are the best fit at Automattic, and it's those people that we most want to attract to the company, and it's those people who perform the best once they're here. These are tough questions because you want all of those. And for the most part, we're able to select for candidates who do have those skills, and so we don't need to prioritize one over the others. We do like to say internally that communication is oxygen, because without communication, there can be no collaboration. And if you're thinking critically and you have great ideas, but you're not communicating them to other people in a way that allows you to work together to create a beautiful product, then that creative thinking won't actually result in a product that will benefit our users. So being forced to choose among that group of 4 traits, I would choose communication, because I think it enables all the others to be realized. If they're not, I haven't heard about it. Slack's a pretty great product, and it continues to be improved on a regular basis. So while there's no method of communication that is perfect, Slack's pretty good. And you need to adapt yourself a little bit to working with colleagues when you can't see their facial expressions or you can't hear their tone of voice. So we tend to use more emoticons, and we, try to make sure that we're all very polite in our interactions and not too brief, and to foster that sense of camaraderie and positivity, which is a little bit harder to do, again, when you don't have additional sources of feedback like facial expression. But Slack works pretty well and allows asynchronous communication so well. So if you have someone in a very different time zone, you can ask them a question, and then once they're online, they'll write you back, and I think it works quite well for us. Is that it? Yes. I'd love to add one thing around our syndicates, just because it's cute. So we've come up with some pretty fun names for some of our country companies. Mm-hmm. So, for example, we have a company in Australia that's called Automatic, and our Canadian company is Autotoke for the little hat. And then my favorite is the company name for Ireland, which is AUTO apostrophe Matic. So Automatic. And our head of legal gets credit for many of these names. He's very creative. Our culture is deeply influenced by the people who work here. But it's been distributed and global in nature from day one. And I think the first full-time employee at Automatic was Donica, who is still living in Ireland. And he actually was the first employee of Automatic, because Matt had just created the company and hadn't officially joined yet. So yes, we do have a long history of being distributed, and it's been part of our DNA from the beginning.
I'm not gonna get home.